Welcome, Fiona.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you here. No, it's so good to have you here. I talk a lot about, people getting off the bench, and sometimes it takes adversity, to actually push people off the bench. But you sort of were born with a challenge, and I'm not gonna say it's a bad thing, because I think that everything that happens to us in life is, we just got to make the most of. There's a great saying, isn't there? The things turn out best for those who make the best of the way things turn out. But I just love what you've done. You haven't let, you were born legally blind, but you haven't let that stop you doing anything. And I love how we read in the intro that you never say no to a challenge. I just think that's fantastic. But tell us about, now you're doing hypnotherapy, and you're doing coaching, and you're doing Reiki, and you've got a full-time job, all that kind of stuff. You haven't sort of said, well, look, I'm legally blind, therefore I get to just hang out on a disability pension and sit in a corner. You've said, no way, I'm grabbing the bull by the horns, and I'm going to live life to the fullest. So give us a bit of a background into your younger years.
I guess I was really lucky in the sense that I grew up in far out back in New South Wales, so a town called Broken Hill.
Yeah.
And it was in the days before the internet. I'm showing my age. And we didn't have a lot of resources. And so parents were very working class. And so the whole theory was there's no special treatment, no special school. We did have to make a few adaptations, but, as a general rule, it was just get on with it and work it out as you go. And I guess I was really lucky in the sense that I got to run around with all the other kids and cause just as much mischief as they did. So I was able to sort of, go and chase the snakes and lizards in the bushes, and, try not to fall down the mine shaft and all the other stuff that the other kids were getting up to. And I guess there was someone looking out for me all the time, making sure that, I didn't fall into the lake at the family picnic or whatever. But as a general rule, when I was really young, I was pretty okay with it all. Not until I got older, we all have that identity crisis in your teenage years. And look, there was a lot of other stuff that went on. My dad passed away when I was 15, and there was a bit of school bullying and I don't know, various other bits and pieces. And I just kind of lost my identity for a while there. And probably looking back, these days they'd probably classify me as having had some level of depression. But in those days, once again, resource poor location, you just kind of got on with it and learned how to be resilient and work it out for yourself. And, I was lucky I had a couple of good mentors. There was an amazing teacher that sort of guided me along the way. And I think the opportunity to go and spend some time with other kids that had a disability as well. I got to go on a recreational camp for blind kids. And so that was the first introduction I'd ever had to meeting other kids with a disability. And so these kids were coping with worse situations than what I thought I had. And they were coping well. They were navigating their way around with their mobility devices and little talking computers and all sorts of stuff. And I went, you know what? Actually, in fact, my disability cannot stop me from doing the things that I want to do. And it was the first time that I really sort of started to look outside of the square and go, nope, I'm not going to let this get in my way. And I don't know whether it's part of having a disability or whether it's just my stubborn personality, but one or the other has certainly made me decide that saying no was not an option.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I love that. And despite being, like you say, being subject to some bullying and, that kind of stuff, it would be very easy to say, I can't, but I love that you say I can. That's one of my mottos is, helping people to actually believe that they can. And I love that. You talk about your using your, in the intro, your four senses and your four other senses, and really, I guess we hear a lot of stories, and sometimes you wonder whether it's a myth, if I'm blind, well, I can hear better. And if I'm deaf, I can see better, and there's all this kind of stuff that people say, right? And you often wonder, is that a myth or is that actually true? Because I've heard both sides of the story, but, you sort of really describe it that your other senses really are enhanced. Is that the truth?
Oh, absolutely. And I can guarantee that my children would agree to that too. They're now old enough to get into their own mischief. They're 16 and 18 now, so they can get up to their own mischief by themselves. But when they were little, they could never fathom how I could always tell, mummy's supposed to have, eyes in the back of her head. Well, I think I had bat sensors or something, yeah, because they could always be detected as to what they were doing. Even when I was at the other end of the house, I'd be like, stop doing that. Like,
wow.
how did you even know?
I love that. I had a high school teacher like that. She was 80 and she had these thick Coke bottle glasses. She was just so, old, and we just thought she can't see anything. And I tell you what, she used to name us. She would pinpoint us, while she was writing on the blackboard. She had supersonic hearing. So you've made me think about that. So, that's probably true. And it's, let's focus on for a minute, with your hearing enhancement. Let's say you've got a job, like you're saying, this is not going to stop me. I'm still going to go out there and I'm going to get a job and I'm going to do all the things that other people are doing. So you got a job. You work, well, I don't know where you first got a job, but you're now working full time at Vic Road. So when I go into Vic Roads, I see people on computers, and they're doing, all sort of looking at your I can't even think what it is, your car registration, and they're reading all the little fine print and all that sort of stuff.
So in essence, I'm not now, I haven't for about a year. I transferred to a different role, which is still telephone based with customers. But my previous role was, I worked in the call center at Vic Roads for 5 years. And you can imagine, if you've ever been on the phone line to Vic Roads waiting, listening to that absolutely amazing music while you're on hold for an hour, you can imagine how busy we are all at the other end. And so literally I would do 10-hour days, and you had about a 6-second break in between phone calls. And so it was pretty full on. And the way that I do my job is, and this is where the hearing comes in ultra well, is I have one headset that is a screen reader for my computer. So imagine using your computer with no screen, no keyboard, no mouse. So we've got a keyboard and we've got a headset, and that's literally it. And so I have a keyboard shortcut for every process that needs to happen on the screen. So, if you do your cut and paste little keyboard buttons, I use those for everything. So some of them are 2, some of them are 3 or 4 keys pressed together at the same time to do every little function. Wow. And so I have the little screen man, I call him the man that talks in my computer. And then I have a headset on with the customer, and then usually one ear that's kind of still free for listening to what's going on in the office. And sometimes if I want to block the office out, I'll plug in a headphone in that other ear and listen to some music. So I can multitask all at the same time. And the customers never realized that they were dealing with someone that was doing something slightly different to your average.
Wow. Isn't it amazing? I think that, for me, I've got all my senses, and thank God, but I think we take it for granted. We really do take stuff for granted, and then if someone said to me, here's your headset and you'll just have to work out all your shortcut keys, there's such a temptation to quit and to say, no, I'm not doing that, but I think we fall short, when we have to really consider the lengths that other people have to go to, to learn sort of adaptive things, to make life happen. And I think it's a bit arrogant on our part, actually. I really do. And I often reflect on this, and then I think I should learn. And then I think, and I don't, and it's...
And, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. Yeah. And, the way to operate in life, I think, is to work out what your strengths are. Focus on those, work out what you're not so great at, and go, okay, well, is there some way I can make my life better? Or let's offload that to somebody else. So for me, finances is my absolute horrible thing. Like I hate invoicing and I can manage my own finances, but when it comes to managing sort of business finance or anything like that, it's just really overwhelming. And so I think I don't want that stress and hardship in my life. So I'm just going to, shop that out to somebody else and give them, and that's their strength. And so, I think it's all about identifying what you are good at and making that your focus. And the things that you're not so good at, well, either you can make an effort to try and change it. And if you decide that you don't want to change it, or you don't have the capacity for whatever reason to change it, then go, okay, well, cool. I'm good with not being able to do that, and move on.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, and particularly in corporate jobs, they do a lot of, supervising and performance, whatever it is, like performance reviews and that sort of stuff. And there are still some businesses, because I'm still hearing about this, that they focus on the weaknesses, what's not going right, how can we, instead of focusing on the strengths. And it just, I can never understand that, because if we're all working to our strengths, what an amazing world, what an amazing.
And we're so motivated to keep on following with that momentum and moving forward, rather than worrying about what's not going right.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean we should just disregard our weaknesses and blame other people and say, well, I can't do that, so stiff. I mean, sometimes we've got to actually pull our socks up and do something about it. But I absolutely love what you're doing. You say this, I'll never say no to a challenge or an opportunity. And I love that. And you scared the bejesus out of me before, saying that you were running around chasing snakes. That's just, I don't like doing that with good vision, let alone, I don't know if that's an opportunity, chasing snakes. Anyway, I'm sure it's a challenge, but what has that ever gotten you in trouble? I'm not saying no to anything. I'm going to be stubborn and pick at it, and I'm going to be right out there with this can-do attitude. Ever got you in trouble?
Well, look, I don't know whether I'd call it trouble, but I can tell you a certain memorable experience, and this is definitely my stubbornness kicked in with this as well. So my husband is a sports motorbike rider, and my seat on this motorbike is literally smaller than an A4 size piece of paper stuck up in the middle of the air. And I'll give you a little explanation of my husband, because you would think, oh yeah, no, bikey guy, yeah, and that puts a image in your head. Well, let's just wipe that out completely. Let's go with the fact that his nickname is Lanky, so that's starting to give you a picture.
Yeah.
And maybe we could even go with Stick Man. Like, he's tall and skinny and really not going to be holding me up very well. So off we go on the motorbike trip. This is when I'm still living in Sydney. He's down in Melbourne, and he says, you've got some time off of work, so do you want to come down to Melbourne with me on the motorbike? And I'm like, oh yeah, let's do this. Sounds like an adventure. And so all's going well. We get as far as Canberra, and I'm like, well, this is easy. Like, I'm just sort of, going down the freeway. I can, look, no hands, mum, kind of thing. Like, this is all good. We're all happy, And of course, remember, I'm wearing a backpack because we're doing a 3-day trip. So, I've got some extra weight to carry along with me and balance out as well. And so that's fine. We have our first night up at the top of the Mount Kosciuszko, and we get up bright and early the next morning. And look, I'm sure I should have noticed that evil smirk on his face, because this is, oh, look, let's stop and have a photo opportunity. Now, this is the man that doesn't quite, doesn't take photos very often. So I should have clued in, but I didn't. So we've got this beautiful picture of me standing there, motorbike, helmet in hand, all decked out in my leathers, standing underneath the sign that says next 65 Ks windy roads with a little motorbike symbol on it. And I'm like, 65 Ks, that's all right. We're going, it'll be fine. Yeah. Been on windy roads with him before. Well, not windy hill, downhill windy roads. And it felt like someone had been pushing on my feet while I was doing a handstand for about an hour and a half. And I swear it was worse than childbirth. And I'm just like, my God, my arms are never going to be the same again. But I'm like, surely we're there soon. Like, come on, you're supposed to go at like 100 Ks an hour on a like this road, aren't you? Maybe not, maybe a bit slower, but surely like the maths has to add up and we must be there by now. And finally we got to the end, and I swear I got off that motorbike, and at some point I had given up trying to hold myself up. I sort of put my hands around him and braced myself against the petrol tank most of the time. But in this instance, at some point I had given up doing that, and I just ended up laying on top of him.
Oh.
So the poor dude was going downhill with me literally laying on the back of him, plus the extra weight of the backpack on my back as well. And I swear I was in tears by the end of it, but I still wasn't going to tell him to stop. We kept on going, and then we got to the end, and then I said, I'm never doing that again until at least spending 6 months pumping iron in the gym. And I can tell you, I've been going to the gym now pumping iron for the last year when we're not in lockdown, and I reckon it'll take me 6 years of pumping iron before I could do that downhill trip again.
But you say that's terrible. I felt like I felt like my legs are closed and blah blah blah. But you did it again, and I don't know if you did it before or after, but you got on. You get on the back of, I don't know if it was him, a motorbike.
Oh, yeah, it was. And yeah, it was after that experience too, by the way, yes. I obviously didn't learn my lesson.
At 300 kilometers an hour, was that around the Phillip Island, like around the racetrack?
Yeah. So 300 Ks down the main straight at Phillip Island.
Oh,
so there's one day every year that they have a ride day, where they have one session in the middle of the day where you're allowed to take a pillion passenger. And so we lined it up so I could go out on the track with him.
Is he a professional motorbike rider?
No.
Racer? Shit.
Nope.
So like 300 Ks, okay, so neither of you are used to this. Like, this is not your day job, and it's not his thing. And so you just go boring down the straight at 300 kilometers an hour. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm having this image that if you come off, it's not going to be very pretty.
No amount of motorbike helmet and leathers are really going to help you at that rate. However, having said that, it is certainly by far safer to do so on the track than it is anywhere else, because it's not necessarily the falling off that bothers you. I mean, maybe sliding along the road a little bit is a problem, but it's the stopping at the end. And so whatever stops you on the racetrack, it's usually the gravel pit. So you usually just end up in the gravel pit and you're fine. It's out on the road when you stop.
Yeah.
That might be another car or a tree or the telegraph pole. That does become a problem. So, at least if you do have a problem, then the racetrack is certainly the place to have it.
And I guess to the the bitumen, I don't know what I'm trying to say, the makeup of the surface is meant for that sort of stuff too, so
it's not like our our average city street that's full of potholes and bumps and lumps and whatever. It's it's designed specifically for racing, and especially Phillip Island, because so many motorbikes do use it. It is kept and maintained very, very well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's okay. Well, that's great. I'm not going to do it. And I don't really want gravel rash up my ass. So I'm going to completely stay off that, even though I do ride motorbikes. 300 Ks, I don't want to come off in the gravel, but it really does sound scary, but at the same time, it sounds thrilling. And like for me, I'd be having my eyes open, I'd be watching what was going on, and that would probably scare me twice as much. But for you, it would be the sensation of it, and the feel of the...
And in actual fact, even though I do have a little bit of vision still left, and funnily enough, it's the peripheral vision. So it's the stuff that's in the sides of my eyes that I can still see. So I can tell you how fast those little white lines were flashing by on the side of the road and how close your head comes to it when you go around a corner pretty quickly. But having said that, sometimes I did actually close my eyes and just let that sensation be completely everything else.
Yeah, I forgot about the corners. Geez, see, in my head, I had just the straight, and now you're giving us the whole corner bit. Jesus, you're a bloody daredevil. You're mad as hell. But further to all this, right? Because, I love all this. I love what you've done. And you've just gotten off the bench just so many times. And I love it. So you came down from Broken Hill and, out the middle of the sticks, came into the city. I don't know. Did you go to Sydney or Melbourne?
I went to Sydney first. Yeah. So Sydney first. And was there for, maybe just somewhere in between 10 and 15 years. And then I've been in Melbourne about the same, actually.
Yeah. So you went to uni in Sydney?
Yes.
And studied, I can't remember, social
work. Yep. So it was literally the week after my 18th birthday. I jumped on the Indian Pacific with my suitcase and a couple of boxes in storage. And off I went to Sydney, found myself a little rental near the university, and that was my new life.
Were there challenges? Did you how did you go with it?
Look, I think the biggest thing was a little bit of loneliness to start off with. I don't like spending time in my own space too much. I like to sort of interact with other people. And so until I got myself sort of, a new set of friends and whatever else, it was a little bit sort of tricky. But what I would do in my spare time, and this has got a bit of a funny story too, actually. So what I would do in my spare time was I would just catch the train and just go random places on the train all over the Sydney network and listen to the announcements along the way to say, oh, next station is this, next station's that. And so I learnt my way around Sydney and managed to sort of, stay away from all the creepy train people at the same time. And that turned out to be a good thing, because my ex-husband, when I met him, had the most appalling sense of direction. And so he gets his license and out we go driving. And the big signs that you see on the highway to sort of say, oh, okay, well, we're coming up to a major intersection. This is all the directions of the different places that you can go.
Yeah.
And for a blind girl, I really do not know my left and right. And so he would literally wait until about maybe half a minute before he had to make that decision as to which lane he needed to be in to, go in whichever direction we needed to drive. And he would say, oh, which way do we go? He would never tell me straight away, okay, well, this way, that way. He would say, which way do we go? And I'm like, I don't know. You need to tell me what's on the sign. And so then he would tell me what was on the sign. And then I would have to calculate what's left, what's right, and where do we want to go. And then I would have to translate to him all within 30 seconds so he could work out which way to go. I have no idea why he never would tell me when he could see the sign like a kilometre away what was on the sign. He'd literally wait until the last minute every time. But, I don't know if that's blind leading the blind or what it is, but we got there in the end because, of course, there was no GPS back then. And we never got lost, never in a major car accident because we were in the wrong lane to go the direction we wanted to go. So, we worked it out eventually, but good thing I did know directions because he certainly didn't.
Oh my God. Oh dear, I love it. So when you were doing uni, were you and suddenly studying, to be a social worker or whatever, something in the social field, that sort of stuff. Were you planning on having your own business, or were you planning on working for somebody else, or what were you thinking you might come out the other end?
I didn't really know what I wanted to do to start off with, to be honest. I knew what I didn't want to do. And actually, come to think about it, going back, I did have a plan. So I was this naive girl from the country that thought she was going to go and solve all the homeless youth problems in Sydney.
Yeah.
I'll fix those kids in King's Cross that are on the streets.
Yeah.
And I did some volunteer work about 6 months after I moved to Sydney, and St. Vinny's for Youth, which is quite famous, the Chris Riley guy. Yeah. And I decided quite quickly, oh my gosh, like these kids, some of them are younger than I am. And I mean, I was still only 18 or so at the time. And I thought, they're running circles around me. Like I have nothing on these kids. Like I cannot do this. Like this is not going to be what I need to be doing. So I kind of went back to the drawing board and had to think about what it was that I wanted to do. And I came up with all the things that I didn't want to do, but I wasn't sure what it was that I did want to do. And by this stage, I'd moved to the other side of Sydney from where the university was. And it was time to choose our practical placements. And so there was one place on the list that was actually in the city rather than out on the western suburbs, which is where the uni was. And so I thought, well, I'm traveling from east to west every day to go to uni. I don't want to do that for my placement. So let's go to this place in the city. And it turned out to be a HIV clinic.
Yeah.
And not only did I work on the HIV info line in the middle of the 90s, which I can tell you at 18 was a huge life experience thing.
I bet.
Tell you what, there's not much people could tell me about their lives that would surprise me these days. I stayed there the rest of the time I was at university as a volunteer. Went and worked in a call center for 6 months after uni to sort of, get some money in the bank, and then ended up working back at that organization for about another 7 years as a paid employee.
Wow.
So HIV turned out to be a big part of my career, in fact.
Wow. So when did you think about going out on your own? When did you sort of think, oh, you know what, I really want to just do my own business? And
it was created specifically by COVID, actually.
Yeah.
So,
like a few people.
Yeah. So what had happened is I had ended up at Vic Roads working in the call center because I had gotten a little bit burnt out. I was working in an employment service for disabled people for a while, and got a little bit burnt out doing that because a lot of them didn't want to, work in line with the strategies that Centrelink had set up for them, and it was all a bit messy. And so I thought, okay, we need a break. Let's go and do something else, which is how I ended up back in the call center for a while. And it was during COVID that I thought, let's do some extra study, because I was going a bit bonkers. I like to be busy, as you can tell.
Yeah.
And lockdown didn't really work for me so well. So I thought, right, let's do some extra study, which is when I did the life coaching. And following on from that, I thought, well, now I've got the life coaching, I've got the natural therapy, I've got the social work. Let's see if we can set up our own stuff and see what happens. And, I've still got the fallback of the Vic Roads job, in the sense that, there's a steady income coming in, but I'm very lucky in the fact that my hours are quite flexible, and it means that I can operate both things at the same time. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's often people will think that they have to, if they've got the security of a safe job, often they'll think, I have to completely jump out of that and completely jump into my new job. And sometimes that works for some people, and sometimes that's the best option. But a lot of people see it as a failure if I hang on to my old job, and I call it wing walking. You have one foot on each wing, and I don't see a problem with that. I think that's fantastic. If you just you start working 4 days a week at your regular job, and you give that 1 day a week a crack, and if that starts to grow, then you move that to 2 days a week, and you're less.
Exactly.
I think that's a fantastic way to do it, and it just gives you a little bit more, I guess, security too, particularly if you're paying bills like a mortgage. But the other thing too is that if it doesn't work, you just go back to full time, and like you've got to give it a go. You have to give the thing a crack, because I think it's worse to never have given it a go than it is to give it a go. It didn't work. I'll go back to my job for a while. I'll assess why it didn't work, and I'll go back and I'll have another crack. It's better to do that than just say, well, I wonder what it would. I just love that you're doing that.
I can't imagine, like I so that, and that's why I always do say yes to stuff and work it out as you go.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than having regrets. Yeah. Like if you make a mistake, you learn from it and you go, whoa, okay, well, maybe that was a bad idea. Let's not do that again. But having said that, if it turns out, then great, you've succeeded in something that you didn't think you could do. But nothing worse than looking back and going, what if? What if I had have taken a different choice? What if I had have done that thing that someone offered me to do and I, didn't do it?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I just think that life's too short, and I don't want to be on my deathbed going, oh, damn it, I thought about that thing so often and I didn't do it, and it's, I don't think failure is a bad thing. And I certainly not going down the failure track with you. I don't think that at all. I think you're bloody booming. But, people are scared of failure, and it's kind of like, I want to be on my deathbed and say, I gave it a crack. It didn't work. It didn't work, and I misjudged it. And I want to laugh at myself for giving it a crack and it didn't work.
And you learn something from every
You do.
experience. Yeah. And look, if we only had good, positive experiences in our life, then it would get to the point where you wouldn't be able to really embrace those good experiences. And when you feel that high of, yeah, everything's amazing,
Yeah,
you wouldn't ever have that, because you wouldn't ever have the opposite experience of those lows where you go, oh my gosh. It's like,
yeah.
you need that balance so you can appreciate both things. Otherwise you're just sort of stuck in the middle in monotony.
100%. You're like 2% off good and 2% off bad, and it's kind of like boring. I reckon grab it by 100% and feel like total crap, and really feel your life, and then feel like total ecstasy and really bloody feel your life. That's how I like living. I like things to the extreme, and sometimes it doesn't serve me, and probably like you jump in and things don't serve you sometimes, but you feel it. You feel every goddamn thing you do. You feel, and I don't think anything beats that. That's living. In my opinion, that's living. When you feel the highs, you feel the lows, and you just. I love it. I love what you're doing. Now, tell me about fears and challenges. It's just in everyday life, like are there things that you're just not doing because, and I'm not talking about jumping out of an aeroplane or jumping off a cliff or diving off a jetty when you don't know there's rocks. I'm not talking about those stupid things, but are there things, and some people will be listening going, they're not stupid, Karen, they're fun. No, they're stupid in my eyes. I am not doing that.
Let's go back over that list, Karen.
Have you done those things?
I have been skydiving. I have been bungee jumping.
Oh, you maniac. Really?
Yep.
Oh, Jesus. See, nah, that to me, that's not giving me my living buzz. I can tell I'm terrified of bloody heights. Really? Have you? And
but you know what? It's calculated risks. Yeah. Like, I'm not just going to go and leap off of something that I think is, going to cause me drama. But at the end of the day, like, I mean, I can tell you, like, the brain capacity to say, I'm actually going to do something that is totally against what you should be doing is pretty hard to get your head around sometimes. But at the same token, it's calculated. Like, they've checked all their safety stuff, whatever else. I mean, I probably got more chance of getting hit by the bus in the street or whatever than doing one of those crazy things that are so safety regulated that is going to go wrong.
I hear you, but if I flung off a bloody thing with a rope around my neck, around my leg, I don't mean my neck, I would have a freaking heart attack. I actually know my body would have a heart attack. But anyway.
Well, I can tell you I screamed so loud that I did have a sore throat for about 2 days afterwards. Look, I do admire people who can sky jump and who can bungee jump, because skydive and bungee jump, because this is not my thing. But then again, I've done some crazy bloody stupid things too in my life, and I remember going out for Chinese one night and with my family, and someone was talking about some of my antics when I was younger, and my youngest sister, she just sat there staring, and I said, what? And she says, what the hell was wrong with you? She looked at me, and she's a bloody madman. She's as nutty as bloody, she does the most stupid things, and she just sat there, this face, what the hell was wrong with you? What the hell were you thinking? And so maybe it's as you get older, I'm 58 now, maybe I'd think, oh shit, my bones are gonna crack too. Anyway, I reckon it's fantastic. And I love that you're focusing on can do and not can't do. That's that's really good. Now I think that let's talk about people with disabilities for a minute. I mean, let's be honest. It is a disability, but I like to think of it as a diffability. With a double F instead of with an S, because I think that we all have different abilities, and we all have different capacities, and we're all, as we talked about before, we've all got different strengths. And I think that
you know, you can have your hearing, but if you don't bloody listen to people, you might as well not have it. You know, like seriously.
So true.
And it's I just love what you're doing. I think you're sort of quite the role model for people with disabilities, and you might not see it as that, but I certainly do, because I used to teach people to work with people with disabilities, you know, and I used to work with a lot of people with disabilities, and I used to always think, particularly when I was teaching people how to work with people with disabilities, I used to think to myself, am I going to be embarrassed about this in 20 years' time, you know, or 30 years' time, when it becomes like people with disabilities got the same rights? I mean, I know they have, but that's not actually the truth. Do you know, like, oh, that's the law, but it's not actually the bloody what's going on out there, you know. And we're going to come to a point one day, I hope, where we don't even see the disability, you know. And I often think, am I ever going to be ashamed that I had to actually teach people, you know, with your coaching? Do you get people with disabilities coming to you, like, because they have an assimilation with you, you know, because they think, well, she gets me, you know, and she's a role model. If she can do it, I can do it. You know, do you get that kind of thing happening?
I do. And you know, and it works to my advantage in the sense that I don't take their crap. Yeah, it's probably the easiest way to put it.
Yeah.
So, you know, oh, I can't do that because it's too hard. Well, no, it's actually not too hard. Like, your disability is not what's stopping you from making that choice. It's your brain that's actually stopping you from doing it.
Yeah.
Physically, you can actually do what you need to be doing. You're just choosing not to do it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that that's one thing where I can sort of, and I can offer that perspective, and they're not going to look at me and go, well, how do you know? Where it's like, okay, well, you know, they're more likely to go, oh yeah, maybe I can actually. And so it gives people that ability to kind of rethink things a little bit. And look, I guess because I'm within that realm of, I guess, you know, life experience, it means that I can be a little bit more harsh, and you know, I'm not going to pussyfoot around and be you know, as politically correct as somebody from a different perspective would be, because like I'm there, I'm living it myself. And so I can then portray that real experience to somebody else who's living it as well, rather than trying to sort of, you know, give advice from an outsider perspective, which is what many people sort of feel that others are doing in that kind of field.
I agree. You hear that quite a lot. You know, you're telling me what to do, but you're not doing it yourself, or you don't understand it because you're not actually living that. You know, and I think that's really wonderful. When you know, we just stay on this for a second. You know, we talked about you know, the other 4 senses being enhanced, which is the physical senses. However, we've got all those other, you know, intuitive senses, you know, and that kind of stuff. And you're doing hypnotherapy and Reiki, which is kind of a lot of inner work, you know, and it's sort of you're drawing on your intuition, and you're drawing on those inner feelings and inner vibrations and all that kind of stuff. Do you think that because you can't see, and I know you can see a little bit out peripheral vision, but because you're relying not on seeing a person, because let's say you're doing Reiki, you've got someone there in front of you, or hypnotherapy, you're looking at their face, you know, so because that's not there for you, does that give you more confidence, you know, to feel like you're much more tuned in to them? Because,
I think so, because it just, like, I mean, naturally I'm just not using that other part of my brain, and so I'm using something different. And I think it doesn't look, I mean, it's, I don't know, like, I mean, like, I mean, you can be as woo-woo as you like, in the sense of, you know, what you see or feel or whatever, and then just tame that down to whatever the person's ready to listen to. But I think in essence, definitely. Like, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm clairvoyant or clairaudient or any of those clair things. But having said that, I definitely do pick up on vibes. And even just, you know, sometimes you walk into a room and, you know, that whole saying, like, you know, the energy, you could cut it with a knife kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I definitely clue into things like that whole like, woo, this is a bad place to be kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's really interesting.
And you'd have to rely on that, wouldn't you? Because the rest of us will walk in and we'll take a look around and think, oh, I don't like the look of some of these people. But you would have to rely on that. What you can hear, what you feel. Yeah, I think that's great. And now you're also doing speaking, inspirational, motivational speaking, to share your story and to inspire others, encourage others to, well, if you can do it, they can do it, that sort of thing. I presume like that's what I'm imagining you getting up there talking
a little bit
about.
Yeah, and just getting people to really rethink what have been the pivotal moments in their life, and how things that they've done could be different if they had thought from a different perspective, or even if they look back now from a different perspective and reframe it. And to actually get them to realize that it is within everybody's ability to achieve whatever they set their mind to. It's just a matter of working out what tools and resources you need to get there.
Yeah, I love that. When you do have a talk or do speak, what kind of things do people come up to you and say afterwards?
It's really interesting. I get lots of mixed questions. I'm just thinking, I actually did one at lunchtime today, and I'm just trying to think of some of the questions that I got asked. Lots of questions about childhood, lots of questions about how people can integrate these ideas into their own lives. There's a lot of conversation at the moment around lockdown and COVID, and how to manage your situation within that, and to look at it more positively than what people are having a tendency to do. There's lots of bits and pieces that people come up with, and I don't necessarily tell the whole story of everything, and so then they sort of then go, oh well, there was a bit of a gap there, let's ask a question about that.
I think it's great, and I think that people need to see you and need to hear you. That there's a story there and a voice there, that there's a gap in the market, and I think you're fantastic. I'm glad you're feeling that. I'm going to ask you a question, bit of a cheeky, tongue in cheek. How about those teenage daughters of yours? Do they try to? I know now they're a little bit older and a bit more resourceful. Would they try and pull Swifties on you?
Not so much now, actually, except for I cleaned my room, and then you go and peer underneath the bed and everything's swooshed under the bed. It's like, oh, if mum doesn't step on it as she walks through the room, it'll be okay. So some of that sort of stuff. But as a general rule, like I think, look, I was always a little bit concerned about having children, because the eyesight problem is a genetic thing, and so it sits in the recessive genetic basket, and which means that I don't have any good genes to pass on, and so therefore my children were always going to end up being carriers of this disease. And there was it's incredibly rare. It's such an unusual thing to sort of pop up, and so I thought, oh well, likelihood of a partner that is going to have the same problem is pretty minimal, but you just never know, like that little question in the back of your brain. And that all got thrown out in the end anyway, because the ex-husband was infertile and we went through a donor program, so we know nothing about the genetics of my children on that side anyway.
Oh wow.
So all that stressing was just irrelevant from one point of view. But so I think the process was, okay, well, let's just take the chances. And it goes back to that whole thing, like you bungee jump because it's safe and you've done your research. Same thing. I had children knowing that there was a pretty good percentage of chance that there wasn't going to be a problem with them. And it turned out that was the case. They are both going to be carriers. But then again, I've got a sister who is also a carrier and lives a perfectly normal life. I mean, she never chose to have children herself, but she's lived in Japan for the last 30 years or so, and lives happily ever after kind of thing. So I sort of figure, just because you're a carrier of something doesn't necessarily mean that your life choices are determined by that.
Yeah.
But what has changed my children is their capacity to deal with other people and be non-judgmental.
Oh, good.
And
Yeah.
a story I can remember, and it still blows my mind. It must have happened probably a good 10 years ago now. So there would have been about 6 and 8 at the time. And we're at the local shopping centre. And we'd been to the bathrooms and sort of, they sort of parked me off to the side. They said, hang on, Mum, you just wait over there. And came back. And I said, what were you guys up to? And they said, oh, we were helping a lady. And it turned out that they had parked me off to the side to go and help a lady who was having difficulty accessing the disabled toilet because she was in a wheelchair and she couldn't get the door to stay open for her while she maneuvered.
Oh,
And at that age, I thought, oh my gosh, like that
yeah.
is such an unselfish thing to do, to be thinking of somebody else and to actually go out of your way to go and help them. And I thought, well, if that's the values I've instilled into my children by them having a life with a little bit of diversity in it, then, awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I'm only asking because we've got teenagers, and if they could pull Swifties, they would. They would think it'd be fantastic if they actually think we can't see them, even though we've got bloody good vision.
And you know what? Like at the end of the day, I've got this saying: is ignorance is bliss. Yeah. So sometimes I'm glad of the things that I can't see. And sometimes I think, well, if I could really see what you were doing, I probably wouldn't want to know anyway. So let's just go with I don't know.
I love it.
And the best thing is I miss out on all that eye rolling and whatever else, like the faces and all the huffy teenage behavior. Like, I miss out on a lot of that, which is awesome.
Yeah, that is actually awesome, because that's the stuff that triggers you most of the times. And that's what gets the arguments happening. Why are you doing that? I love it. Now, what do people need to know about people who are blind or vision impaired?
Not everyone uses a guide dog.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Not everyone that uses a white cane or says that they're blind is completely blind. There is definitely a spectrum. And look, this hasn't really been an issue for me, but speaking to other people with vision impairment is they hate having someone just come and help them without being asked.
Yeah.
And so the good old story of someone coming and grabbing you to help you cross the road because they assume that you can't manage to do it yourself, rather than asking, would you like some assistance to cross the road, or are you okay? So assuming the worst rather than expecting that someone can do it and then just offering some assistance to make their life a bit easier, I guess. Yeah.
And so how about when people come up and say, do you need some help? Is that offensive? Do you find that offensive?
No, look, I mean, if it's done with that's good Samaritan as far as I'm concerned. Like, I mean, if someone's coming out of their way to help you, then the least you can do is be courteous and say, no, I'm fine, thank you. But thank you so much for asking, because most people wouldn't even bother to go out of their way to ask. So it's actually, I get angry at those people that go, no, I'm all right, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I think that's kind of being really rude, back to somebody. Like, I mean, it's not that they're assuming that you need help. They're offering just in case you do.
Yeah. And I think it's quite difficult too, if you haven't been around people with disabilities. It's quite, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to act. There's quite a lot of I'm just not sure. And I think that it's just nice to be courteous, exactly like you're saying. And just treat people the same. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you?
Yep. Absolutely. And I think, it comes down to then your, just your ability to then ask questions. Yeah. Just don't assume. And look, I think if someone's going to be offended because you asked a genuine question, then that's their problem, not yours. Yeah. You've done the right thing by asking. And if someone's going to be offended by someone's genuine want to help or need to know, then that becomes that other person's problem.
Yeah, I agree. Look, we're not all perfect. We're not all politically correct. We all make mistakes. We all sort of, say things we wish we didn't and do things we wish we didn't. But I think it comes down to exactly what you're saying. Is the intent good? And I think that's the measurement really, is the intent meant to be good? Like, are we intending to be kind? Are we, even if we screw it up? But
Yep, absolutely.
yeah,
And that goes for anything in life. Yeah, you're
I
always going to
agree.
make mistakes, but as long as you didn't, we don't often go out there purposely to be malicious. Yeah. And so many of us have baggage about stuff that somebody else did. And it's like, no, in fact, like, that was your true choice to react in the way that you did to that situation. And maybe their intent was so different to the perspective that you took of the way things turned out. But, people don't let go of that stuff really easily.
No. Well, we're wired for negative bias and we're human beings, so we're never going to get it right. But we might as well try to be kind anyway. But I think you're inspirational. I'm not just blowing wind up your bum, like, oh, you got disability is so cool. I just think you are, and it's you've got some challenges that you're deciding, like, I know, screw that, I'm going to do this anyway, and I'm going to make the most of my life. You're a bloody great role model for people, and you're given life one hell of a crack. And it would, having a vision impairment or not, I just love people who give life a crack to, and really grab it by the horns. And it doesn't mean I'm not talking about bungee jumping, because I'm not doing that. But now I love this question, get this podcast is get off the bench to inspire people out there to take action and do stuff. Now, there's going to be a lot of people out there with disabilities of various natures, and a percentage of these people will believe that fulfilling their dreams isn't possible or just isn't in the pipeline due to the challenges that they have, real or perceived challenges, because there's a big difference. What advice would you give them?
Give it a go. Yeah. What's the worst that can happen? You can fail. And if you fail, you'll learn something from that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a failure anyway, is it?
That's right.
Yeah, no, I love that. Now, Fiona, I have absolutely loved this interview. I've loved chatting with you. I love your attitude. I love your sense of humor, and I love that we've had a freaking good laugh. And it's just, it could be a really serious kind of, down topic. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, but you've made light of it, and you've got such a great sense of humor. You got so much greatness to give to the world, and I've just absolutely loved this. And I know people are going to want to follow you. So where can people find you?
I am all over the socials. Probably the best one at the moment, I'm really trying to do lots of bits and pieces on Instagram. So the Instagram is Fiona.Demark _blind_inspiration.
Yeah.
And I am putting up all of my blind girl activities, fails, moments in life. And then if you would like to learn some more about what I do, probably the best location is my website, which is www.fionademark.com.au.
Fantastic. And there is also Facebook, and there's also LinkedIn. So, and of course, as I always do, put all these links in the show notes so people can click on any of these and find you. So it'd be fantastic if they follow you and go and see what you're doing, and maybe get some coaching from you, because you're not gonna look at them and judge their appearance. You're just gonna tell them what they want to hear.
Well, definitely not. No, I mean, the first rule of coaching is that you need to be non-judgmental anyway. But yeah, certainly you're not going to get any judgment on the way you look from me. That's for sure. And you don't even have to rock up in your you can wear your pajamas. You could be naked for all I know. And
let's not encourage that. No. Because sometimes we're recording on Zoom and we forget, so we won't encourage the naked Zooms. But I reckon that's fantastic. Well, thank you so very much for joining us, and thank you so much for being candid about everything, and I don't know, just being fair dinkum about it. I think that's a really, really lovely quality, and I think everyone listening to this is going to have learned something amazing from you, and I just wish you all the best. This is just wonderful.
I hope so, because everyone should learn something new every day. So if I've
Yeah.
been the inspiration for you to learn your new thing today, then that is awesome. But if not, go and learn something else from somebody else right now.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, and I'll put all this in the show notes, and I hope everyone follows you. And I've been following you, and I just think it's wonderful. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Karen. You have a lovely day.
You too. Thanks. See ya.
Thank you.